Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Danny, and I am thrilled to have my good friend Joseph Gallagher, author of the book The Quantum Kingdom Within, back for a conversation about Jesus, consciousness, and the fabric of reality, unifying ancient wisdom with modern science. And you might say, what does modern science have to do with Jesus' teachings? Well, stick around because if we look at Jesus through the lenses of quantum physics, boy, he really begins to make sense, as do other great spiritual masters. So let me start by saying that since Isaac Newton, science has looked at the universe as individual units of matter. In other words, we're made of matter, we're separate from the earth, which is matter. The earth is separated from the other planets, all the galaxies are separate, the stars, and there's empty space, a lot of empty space in the universe. But the empty space is just that. It's empty, it's dumb, it's dead, and it has no effect on anything. We don't even pay any attention to it. And religion has used this model to say that we also are separate with God, who is a man sitting on a throne somewhere up in heaven, and he's kind of orchestrating this mechanical universe, making sure everything is working properly. But the modern quantum physics that was pioneered by people like Einstein and others, it gives an entirely different model. In other words, it says that the empty space is not empty, but it's actually full. It even has divine attributes. The empty space that holds all the universe, the galaxies, it's the only thing in the universe. It's everywhere at the same time, so it's omnipresent. It's holding all of these galaxies in it, so it would be called omnipotent or all-powerful. And every law of science in the universe, everyone is contained in the empty space, not as individual units of study, but as one indivisible unit. But the good thing about the empty space and modern quantum physics is that we're told that since our bodies on a quantum level are just energy and really just empty space, the empty space is in us and we are in the empty space, and we, through our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, either consciously or unconsciously, our inner state, the inner kingdom that we exist in, it has a profound impact on our exterior world, and this is both individually and collectively. So I'm really excited to have Joseph back because we're going to dive deep into this today. And Joseph, you just came out with a new book called Collapsing Reality. And so welcome, and why don't you talk about what is collapsing reality and how does it relate to Jesus and his teachings?
Well, Danny, first of all, thank you for having me back again. As I say, I'll keep coming back until people are fed up hearing me. But well, yeah, I brought out a new book just a few days ago called Collapsing Reality. Now, the purpose behind it is, as you know, I wrote The Quantum Kingdom Within, and I have another book already written that I haven't brought out yet called The Quantum Gospels, and it's taken a look at the actual Gospels and the story, the teachings, the miracles, etc., of Jesus, but looking at it through a quantum lens, which I believe gives a greater understanding to the life and the story of Jesus. Um, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to put in between those two books a slightly shorter. It's 184 pages. It's a slightly shorter book that bridges between what was written in the Quantum Kingdom Within and what's going to be in what's going to be released in the Quantum Gospels. So this is a bridging book between the two, just in preparation for what's going to come at you in the Quantum Gospels, because in the Quantum Gospels we really take a deep dive into the link between what spiritual masters have always known and what science is attempting to claim for the last 100 years. Even though, funny enough, I was reading a report only this morning. I think it was Nature magazine ran a poll of 1,000 quantum physicists, and even after 100 years, they still can't agree with what quantum physics actually is, because I think there's still, some of them are still quite tied towards the Newtonian system, and the belief that there should be an absolute logical explanation for everything. And I think where they're failing is that they're not realizing that quantum physics is actually reality. It's not something to be toyed with. It's not something that they can fit in to what they feel reality should be. They have to start realizing, as the spiritual masters have always done, that our reality actually is quantum physics. So it's that report coming out was actually quite good timing for my book. It was sort of a marketing coup d'état, even though it was unintentional. So basically, as I say, what we're doing now is we're starting to delve deeper into what people will call quantum physics, but in reality, my intention is that we're delving deeper into true spirituality, the true nature of existence, and ultimately bringing us towards the true nature of who we are.
Oh, I love that, Joseph. And I mean, you have in the quantum kingdom, you divided it into three sections, kind of a trilogy. And now then you're working on another trilogy. And I love what you're doing because I totally agree with you that quantum physics, it really is what it is reality. It's the unity of oneness, and it's exactly what Jesus was teaching and the great spiritual masters. And I think it's a message whose time has really come. And I'm so excited to read. I just got your book on collapsing reality, and I was so busy last week that I didn't even have time to read it all, but I've skimmed through it, and it's like, wowza. I mean, you really put some great things into it, Joseph, and I'm really super impressed with it. And I can't
Thank you.
wait to read it. And I can't wait to read the one that you have on the Gospels, the quantum Gospels, because
Yeah,
and when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, and the things that we always look at Jesus as, oh, he was God, so he abracadabra, he did things by this mystical power. But he said, no,
yeah.
the works that I do, you can do also. And it's in understanding that our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, we send out energy into the world and we interact with this field. And by interacting with the field and knowing how to do it, yeah, we can change our outer circumstances.
Yes, well, you see, the Quantum Gospels, which is the next book that's already written but still hasn't come out, that was a lot of fun to write. That really was so much fun to research and to write, and you know, I kind of took myself back to school when I was researching it. It was a beautiful period to write that book. But in the book that's out now, that's bridging the two, collapsing reality, it actually outlines what you've just said, that it wasn't Jesus doing these things and that's because he's God and nobody else can do it. It's actually showing that the what Jesus promised, that you too will do these things and perhaps even greater, was factual. Jesus already knew that this power, for want of a better word, this power was already within us all. I don't like using the word power when it comes to speaking about collapsing realities and manifesting and miracles, etc., because it's not so much a power, it's more of, you wouldn't call your ability to move your arm a power, it's just something we can do. Well, it's the same thing on a spiritual level. Collapsing reality, controlling our own destinies, bringing what joy and fulfillment into our own lives through the observer effect, as quantum physics calls it. that's something, that's not a power. That's just something we actually just naturally do. And we're doing it every single day. But the difference is when you think we're like babies in a sense, because when you think that I've just moved my arm because I wanted to, a baby, when you look at a newborn baby, its limbs are everywhere because it can move its limbs, but it just hasn't yet learned how to control the movement of its limbs. So if we take it to a spiritual level, essentially an energetic level, which is what we truly are, we're energy. We are now learning, like babies, we are now learning how to use this inherent ability that we already possess, and how to control it, and how to make it work for our own benefit, and hopefully with ethical responsibility, which I speak about in the book. We'll use it for the benefit of all humanity.
Oh, I love that, Joseph. I mean, that is so true. And I love what you said about a baby, because a baby, has no control over itself. We are kind of babies spiritually, I believe, and we're moving into beginning to understand what Jesus said. And of course, I totally, and this is total heresy to Orthodox Christianity, but I don't believe Jesus came to save us from our sin because of Adam and Eve and the talking snake and all of that stuff. I believe he did come to save us kind of from our ignorance and save us from religious indoctrination. And what he came to tell us is not that I'm greater than you and you'll always be separate from me. No, but you are one with me. And he said this so clearly,
Yeah,
in prayers to the Father, Father, may they be one as we are one.
yeah,
But, the religious doctrine that has been forced upon us, and that's kind of given us our reality of separateness from God, and God is angry outside of us. And it's totally different from what Jesus spoke. So, I believe Jesus came to tell us that we can become like he is. We can do the things. We can realize our oneness with the Creator, and that's through finding the kingdom of heaven that is within us. And you did such a beautiful job in really explaining this in your book, The Quantum Kingdom, and collapsing reality. I'm just starting to read through it, but wow, it is amazing, Joseph. So
thank you.
appreciate what you've done.
Oh, it's very kind words of you, Danny. Thank you. As I say, I hope that it serves its purpose as bringing us bridging the gap between the quantum kingdom within and the quantum gospels, because as I just explained there, and it's really the first time I've actually thought about it in this way. That we can use the analogy of spiritual babies, because that's really what we are. We're only now, and it's a beautiful time to be around, because we're only now starting to, well, the mainstream, us ordinary folk are only now starting to understand the spiritual power that we really already have. I mean, spiritual masters have spoken about it for thousands of years, and it's quite amusing when you think that what are considered our greatest academic brains, and the quantum physicists, they're still arguing about what quantum physics actually is. And I think it shows a Newtonian arrogance, if you like, because they're still trying to fit it into what they think reality has to be, instead of opening their minds, as Jesus and other spiritual masters um, encouraged us to do, open our minds and start discovering for ourselves what reality truly is. And as I spoke, I think it was the last time we spoke, or it might have been the time before, when I was talking about how we're on a we're evolving spiritually. Spiritual evolution is our true evolution. We're energy that at some point became self-aware, and we're moving through shells, we're moving through realities. Who knows really what comes next? But at some point, when we reach our fullest point of evolution, we will be absolute consciousness. And well, when you look at quantum physics, quantum physics is all about consciousness. For example, the double slit experiment. We were speaking just before we came on camera, Danny. The double slit experiment is a beautiful example of absolute consciousness playing its role in reality, because the double
Let
slit
me see
experiment
if
is
I can bring it
possibly,
up.
the double slit experiment is possibly the most famous, certainly among mainstream, it's the most famous experiment in quantum physics. And what happened there was that they're firing protons, particles through two slits with a screen at the back end. And now what you would assume is that they would go through either one slit or another and create two lines on the back screen. But when they're unobserved, actually, by the time they hit the back screen, they're misplaced. It's as if they've went through both slits at the same time. Now, the reason they went through both slits at the same time is because they're in waveform, which means they respond to all probabilities and all possibilities. Therefore, well, if there's two slits, they're going to go through two slits. But when they were observed, that's when they collapsed into particles and they started going through either one slit or the other. Now, that's very well known, that part of the experiment. But what's lesser known is that when the physicists are using the term "when they were observed," that doesn't mean that they were actually looked at either by the human eye or through equipment. What they mean by observing is acknowledging the fact that this wave function is approaching the two slits. So that then has profound implications on our consciousness, because it means that we don't have to actively be looking at something to qualify as observing it. The very fact that we're consciously acknowledging that there's infinite possibility out there, and consciously acknowledging that we can collapse that infinite possibility into a manifest reality through our thoughts, through our emotions, through the energy that we send, that's got massive implications. And I don't know why it hasn't, well, I kind of do know why it hasn't been more populated in mainstream media. But what the double slit experiment shows that's kind of been held back from us a little bit is that the act of observation isn't like a physical act of observation. It's an acknowledgement of the fact that there's waveforms of all potential possibility there, and that if we acknowledge that, believe it, and interact with our own energy, then we can actually collapse it down into our chosen reality. As I explained last week, providing that we have that single focus upon it, because if that, and that's why Jesus always spoke about faith, etc. Because if we're acknowledging a potential reality with doubt, with fear, with trepidation, with hesitation, then we're interfering, we're sending interference through our waveforms, our energy, and it can collapse something that's not quite what we wanted, or something that's the exact opposite of what we wanted. So a single-minded, absolute belief, faith, focus is essential when we reach that point. And I try as best I can to explain that through the book.
Well, yeah, I love that, because we are, in fact, and to a large extent, creating our own reality just by our thoughts and beliefs, even though most of them and most people, it's totally unconscious. It's done
Yeah,
unconsciously. And this is my main problem with religion, all religion, because all religions say the most important thing to join our religion is you must accept our doctrines, our beliefs. And so people say, okay, I believe it. And what they're actually doing is they're joining in with a collective, and it's a shared reality or a collective consciousness. And of course, so the Mormons and Muslims and Jehovah Witnesses and Protestants and Catholics, they all have their own shared reality. and this reality is that I'm separate from you, and those people are heretics. And in, instead of having a shared reality of, wait a minute, we are all united. Father, may they be one as we are one, as Jesus prayed. If that was our reality, we could collapse reality into peace on earth. And because we do create our own reality, and religion is creating a reality of separateness. And so I love what you're doing to help wake up people, and your books. I mean, these it's amazing what it's going to do.
Well, again, thank you for your kind words. But
Well, it's
you've
true.
kind of really hit a strong nail in the head there. That you see, mainstream organized religion, and not just Christianity, other religions as well, but mainstream organized mass belief systems, and it could even be political mass belief systems. It can be religious. It can be things such as racism or homophobia or sexism or anything at
Absolutely.
all. Anything that's a mass belief system, especially if it's ultimately based upon separation, division, hatred, negative, deep negative emotions. Well, you've got to remember those emotions are just the same as love, joy, peace, in that they're they're not at the same frequency, but they're still going out there. So if you're pushing out a narrative of negativity, well, that's energy that's going out into the field, and sadly, what it means is that we as a collective, humans as a collective, are collapsing. We wonder why the world's so messed up. Well, it's because of what we're putting out there. You know, the, the unified field is only giving us what we're asking for. And if we're putting out unified field, it's not there babysitting us and like a parent would a child. It's not there making sure that we always have everything that's to our own benefit. The unified field essentially is giving us free will. It's allowing us to put out the energies that we choose to put out, and it's given us back exactly what we asked for. So the unified field is very, very benevolent in that it will give us exactly what we ask for, but it's also going to give us free will. So again, there's where your unified field has the same similarities that we attribute to God, in that we have free will. But what we need to do now is we need to start like a child growing up. They learn how to use certain functions of their body, and they have to learn how to use them ethically and responsibly. Well, now we are starting to uncover the fact that we have this inherent power. And again, I use the word power loosely. We have this inherent ability to to create reality, to bring into to our very experience that for which we ask. Now we have to learn to use that ethically and responsibly as individuals, but also as an entire whole, because ultimately we are all interconnected. Um, Quantum entanglement, which I go into in the book, explains that as is done by one and done by many is done to others. We're all, whether we like it or not, part of this unified field. To coin a phrase, we're in it together, guys. And we have to start realizing that. We have to start waking ourselves up. We have to start learning. It's our responsibility to learn about quantum physics and about quantum reality. It's our responsibility as humans, as the human family. I mean, what became of us as a human family when people are starving and dying and living on the streets, and you've got children just begging for a crust of bread? There's such a deep sadness in that. And that sadness is self-feeding, because that sadness leads to a state where us as a human family feel there's a need for division. There's a need for grasping at anything we can. There's a need for greed. There's a need for survival. And yet there is no need for any of those things if we as a human family just bind together and realize that we're all one. We're all in it together. And this dimension that we're in could be so beautiful if we would all just become knowledgeable about the abilities that we have and the fact that we're interconnected.
Oh, Joseph, what you just said, I wish everybody heard. I wish people you shout that from the rooftop, my friends. And I love what you said about the quantum field can only give us what we give it, what we put out. That's a law. That is the law of gravity can't be broken. Well, that is a law that can't be broken also. The quantum field can only give us back what we're putting out. So if we're putting out hate and fear and bitterness and greed, and that's what comes back to us, and that's why the world is so messed up today. And we've been programmed by religion to think of God as separate, and our we got to believe our doctrines and defend them, when the doctrines are really what keep us from seeing the true message of what Jesus was sharing, what he told us, what he gave his life to bring us. And I mean, we got to get back to that.
Oh, without question. And it, I find it mind blowing that we really do have a choice, a choice of how of how this experience that we're sharing in this dimension can be. We have a choice. We can have, if you like, we can have our own Garden of Eden, but we've chose to leave it. We were never cast out of it. We just chose to leave it because the unified field gives us the potential for such a beautiful experience, and yet for some reason we just can't grasp that, and we keep feeling this need for scarcity and greed and looking after ourselves instead of looking after each other. And I didn't intend to go this conversation to go this way, but I get so passionate about it, and I'm putting out an appeal to the human family. Let's wake up and realize that quantum physics is, if nothing else is your guide, if you won't listen to the spiritual masters, if you won't listen to your own innate inbuilt humanity, your own innate inbuilt spirituality, if you won't listen to any of that, just listen to science, listen to quantum physics, listen to the fact that it's now more than ever, perhaps in human history, it's now right there in front of us, proof that we can have a beautiful experience. Even if you're doing it for selfish reasons, just do it. Open up and start realizing that if we work together as a human family, this can be such a beautiful dimension.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see the potential for the human family. I mean, if we went by the teachings of Jesus, and when I say the teachings of Jesus, I separate Christ and Christianity into two totally different things. There's Christ, and this is the teachings that actually Jesus spoke, that he said, like, love one another, forgive, go the extra mile, treat others as you want to be treated. There's nothing religious about that. The teachings of Jesus that came from his own mouth. They do not belong to Christianity or Mormon or Jehovah Witness or anybody else. They transcend religion. They transcend race. They transcend nationality or any other label we put on people. And if we put them into practice, Jesus said, if you do these things, this is what brings you joy. I've come that your joy may be full. And we are so caught up in materialism and divisiveness and judgment and judging others whose skin's the other color, or whatever, or a different religion, or different, they were born on the wrong side of the border, so they're bad. And we judge good and evil through the doctrines that we've accepted when we joined whatever belief system we were born into or we adopted. And so we're divided. And I tell people, like, the teachings of Jesus, it's the blueprint. to bring the kingdom of heaven here to earth. But he said, first, the kingdom of heaven is within us. And if we don't find it within us, we'll never find it without. And like I say, Jesus, I believe he came to tell us that, hey, I am showing you what you have the potential to be. But it's not like, oh, you pray a prayer and now I'm good. It's like, no, you crucify yourself, you crucify your ego. If any man wants to be my disciple, Jesus said, first, you must deny yourself. You must take up your cross and follow me. That means dying to this false self, this ego that kind of takes control of us. And but the world that we could create, it absolutely no war, no homelessness, no. I mean, I want everybody on earth to be happy, even for selfish reasons, because if everyone is happy and at peace, well, I'm going to be living in a beautiful world then. So I want everybody. But if you have greed and lust and all these desires, and you you're you're sabotaging your inner peace and your inner love because you're looking for that out in the world, and it's not out in the world. You can only find it within, and that's it.
Oh,
um,
absolutely. And I mean, like, everything you just said is to me common sense. But the problem comes in then when you've got mainstream religion. In the terms of Jesus, you've got mainstream religion, and if Christianity was right, why is there so many different sections of it? Why is there so many different denominations? I mean, surely if this denomination or that denomination or the other denomination, surely if any of them were right, well, everyone would just automatically flow to that and it would just be obvious. But yet there's all these divisions even within Christianity itself, all these different doctrines and dogmas and creeds and beliefs, and and Christians telling each other that they're going to burn in hell. You know, to tell someone else that they're going to be tortured by God for eternity is, one, anti-Christian. You don't make threats if you're actually a Christian, and two, I can never understand why people can't understand that the concept of hell is the greatest insult they could possibly give to a loving God. You're calling God a
Absolutely.
sadist. You're calling God a sadist when you talk about hell. No loving, all knowing, all loving, eternal, knew it before he even began God is going to take someone and torture them for eternity because they made some mistakes during a 70, 80, 90-year lifespan. What is say even 100 years? What is 100 years compared to eternity? And you're telling me that bad actions that took place, and if you condense down the bad actions of even the worst individual you can think of a military dictator, you you condense down their evil acts from their lifetime, it probably comes out at 12, 15, 20 years of evil acts, right? All combined. And during those 20 years, they were still being nice to their own families, they were still being good to their own friends. There was still a goodness there as well. And partly the reason why we get so deep into this, into judging other people, is because what they're doing, what we're condemning them for, we know that it's deep down within us too. We have the potential to be just as bad as they are, and it's like self-reflecting. It's like a self-defense system. If I condemn you, then it means I'm not as bad as you. And for Christians to condemn each other to hell is the most ludicrous, mind-bending thing. I just can't put words on it. And I can't put words on how much of an insult it is to God. Now, I know there's some very fundamentalist Christians watch your channel just to come on and criticize and condemn, etc. Well, I'm asking any fundamentalist Christian watching this today to just have a think. How can you're a human, you're just a human, you're not God. How can you, even as a human with all your faults and failings, justify torturing someone for all of eternity, no matter what they've done? And I don't want anybody to come on with the excuse of, oh, but if you could only see it through God's eyes. That doesn't wash. I challenge any fundamentalist Christian to in their own words truly justify torturing someone for all of eternity. And I'll even take it a step further. There's certain elements of Christianity who claim that some people are actually born to be condemned for eternity. Justify that. Justify that in words how that can be right by any standards, let alone the standards of an almighty, all-knowing, all-loving God.
Oh, well said, Joseph. I mean, the whole concept of hell, and I grew up in the Baptist church in this little farming community, and it was preached hell, fire, and if you don't obey Jesus, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. I mean, that was my reality. It was hell that really scared me into it, and hell is very effective. The church used it all through the Middle Ages, all through to terrorize people, and it's just I think that's horrible to do, because if you just read the Gospels about Jesus, I mean, the picture that he painted of who God is. He said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you're looking at me, you're not looking at me, but you're looking at the one who sent me. And he told the
Yep.
parable of the prodigal son. That's who God is, and that's the quantum. But he also said that it's like the law of karma, and people don't see this, but Jesus taught this real clearly, that if we don't forgive others, neither will our Father forgive us. So who is really judging us? We are judging ourselves. And if
Yep.
we judge another, and this is why Jesus said so strongly over and over again, do not judge others. Don't judge and you won't be judged. Don't
Yep.
condemn and you won't be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. Because if we don't forgive, neither will our Father forgive us. That's a law. That's not an arbitrary God up there with the whim of, his emotions saying, oh, I'm going to judge you for this and you did that. No, it's we judge ourselves. But we've been taught that we're separate, we're born guilty, we're unworthy, God hates us, there's no good in us, there's none righteous, no, not one. Our righteousness is as filthy rags, and God's too pure to look upon our sin. That's BS. That's a belief system. And Jesus totally dismantled that belief system. But Christianity came along and reinstated it. So now we're separate from God. And it's just, it's sad. And it is, and like you say, I mean, wars have been fought, and you were in a bombing, the
Yes.
Catholics and the Protestants in Northern Ireland. So, firsthand, I mean, the evil, the depravity that has been done in the name of Jesus. And that's why I say, Christ and Christianity are two different things. And there is nothing on earth that has slandered or misrepresented Jesus and his message more than the Christian religions have. And if we ever realize that we do have power, but it's within our, and again, power, I don't like that, word either.
Yeah.
Responsibility, we have the ability to become Christ-like, and becoming Christ-like is realizing that we have everything that we don't need the outer world to make us happy on the inside. It's just a totally, as much different as the Newtonian model is from the quantum model, is how different Jesus is from
Yeah.
Christianity.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Just to sort of come back on a point you were making there, that Jesus said, "Don't judge, and you will not be judged." I mean, it's even in the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." And Jesus said so many times, and if you have a grudge against your brother, go and sort that out with him before you pray. There was so many different examples where he was putting across the message, don't be judging anyone. And then along comes Paul and teaches this righteous judgment, to righteous judgment's okay, and you have to judge righteously, and etc. So the whole thing just caved in itself. But now you've got fundamentalists leaping all over righteous judgment, right? Anytime you say to a fundamentalist, why are you judging people? It's righteous judgment. And it's like they're giving themselves an excuse for do you know what they're doing? They're excusing their own bad behavior. They're excusing their own ignorance by claiming that it's righteous judgment. Now, who do we want to follow? Do we want to follow Paul, who never actually met Jesus, or do we want to follow Jesus, who was a spiritual master?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Don't get me started on Paul. He was trying to defeat Christianity by killing the Christians and, by persecuting them and fighting against them. And I think it's kind of almost a thing, if you can't beat them, join them, and then you can destroy it from the inside instead of from the outside. But
Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree with you about Paul. If you just read the Gospels, and if we just went by that as the Bible, I'm just talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, even. If we just went by that, Christianity could not exist as we understand it today. You couldn't have this massively wealthy system, hierarchy that has absolute control over the minds of the people. Because Jesus said, "Hey, if you want to be the greatest, the prerequisite is you must become a servant of all. You must become the least." And Jesus demonstrated this, so there's no getting around it. He
yeah,
was the greatest, but he never said, "Oh, I'm going to live in a mansion and you're going to carry me around on a golden chariot and feed me grapes and fan me because I'm greater than you." Have a golden, everything. You know, Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and he said, "Do you understand? These are the people that were going to go out and spread the gospel." Not the gospel that, "Oh, you're a sinner, you're a worthless piece of crap because of Adam and Eve, and you better confess Jesus as Lord." That's not the gospel. The gospel is you can become like I am. And these were the people he was going to send out to do it, his handpicked disciples. And he washed their feet. And he said, "Do you understand what I did for you?" He said, "You call me Lord and Master, and that's true because I am. But if I, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, I'm giving you the example that you are to wash one another's feet, and you're to wash the feet of the people you serve." And we got mega church pastors flying around, and televangelists, and they're, "Hey, send me money and God will bless you." And it's just, I mean, but if you just go by the Gospels, that you were right, like with Paul, man, you can justify a lot of stuff. And you go back in the Old Testament, man, I can kill you, I can hate you, we can commit genocide on you, you can justify absolutely anything, but not
yeah,
from the Gospels.
yeah. You can justify anything, but not from the mouth of Jesus.
No.
The mouth of Jesus does not justify slave ownership. It does not justify stoning. It does not justify, um, you know, treating female prisoners in a certain way. It does not justify any of these things. It does not justify judgment. It does not justify placing yourself above others. None of these things are justified from the mouth of Jesus. He justified none of those things. In fact, he did the opposite. But what he also did was he said that if you go within yourself, if you find the kingdom within, you will find, in there, you will find me and you will find the Father. Now, he wasn't, by claiming that you would find him, he wasn't claiming, I'm God. He was claiming, I am in God, God is in me. He was claiming that you can find the very methods that I've found that's given me this freedom, this eternal life, where they can nail me to a cross and I'll just get back up again. He was explaining that he was explaining what quantum physics is. He was explaining how to collapse reality. He was explaining how to find within yourself a peace and a joy and a love and a calm that is unknown, and that you will never find through the Old Testament, and you will never find through the writings of Paul or any of that. You will only find it within yourself. He wasn't even claiming you will only find it through him. Jesus never claimed that you would find it through him. He claimed you will find it within yourself. And he was, there's a story of Buddha, who was around 500 years before Jesus ever walked the earth. And he came out of a deep meditation one time, and he spoke of a vision he had of someone who was coming, who was even greater than him, who would who would guide people towards finding their true essence. Now, there's a lot of argument that he had just seen a vision of Jesus coming, because Buddha would have been within the quantum field. He would have been within the unified field very much so during his meditations, just as Jesus was. And it's very possible that he became aware of Jesus, who was a spirit within the quantum field, who was yet to manifest into human form and take the teachings even further. So Jesus was very much a master of the unified field, and he understood the ethics that come with the ethical responsibility that comes from being a master of the unified field. There are examples you can give that I don't particularly want to go into, especially not on a channel as good as this. But there are examples you can give where there have been masters of the unified field who have used it for evil. There are, it's not that difficult to figure out certain evil characters in human history who obviously, whether they were doing it with conscious knowing or not, they had basically mastered the principles of the unified field and collapsing reality and quantum physics, and they chose to use it for evil. But then you have the likes of Jesus, who was an absolute master of it, like a serious master of it, who took it with an ethical responsibility. And he was trying to guide us in a way that we would discover the kingdom within us and our inherent abilities, but to understand that the world's a beautiful place when these abilities are used for purposes of love and joy and unity, rather than for purposes of power, etc. Because as you just said, Jesus could have easily been living in a mansion with harems of women and the latest deluxe sports chariot sitting just outside his mansion, etc. But he was such a master. No one could have actually stopped him. Jesus could have taken over the whole world, and we spoke about that previously, where the temptations in the desert, when he was in the wilderness, where he had the three temptations. These were basically saying to him, "Who's going to stop you? You can, this wasn't an entity with a pitchfork and a pointy tail standing in front of him. This was his own ego mind speaking to him from within, saying, "Look at what you can do. Look at what you could have in this earthly realm if you use these powers." And Jesus had to battle with his own ego to use the powers for the right purposes. And not only did he use the powers for the right purposes, he went to his physical death, and physical death is nothing, but to face a physical death with the pain and humiliation that Jesus faced, through the crucifixion and the whippings and the torture and the abuse physically and mentally and verbally that he would have received. was awful, beyond words awful. But he faced that with not just a courage and a a humility and in an inspiring way. Not only did he face it that way, he faced it with a knowledge that where we are now, what we're experiencing now, isn't actually reality. All it is like a picture show of what we're collapsing for ourselves. And in many ways, Jesus must have felt very sorry for us because Jesus understood how to collapse reality. You only have to look at incidences where he healed the man's withered hand, or he gave sight to the blind, or you know, fed the multitude with bread and fish. Jesus knew how to collapse reality, like the true master he was, and he must have looked at humanity with an awful, given the compassionate heart he had. He must have looked at humanity with such with such pity, with such a despair, because he knew what this world, he really knew what this world could be if we all just understood our own inert ability and used it ethically. But and he tried to guide us towards that, but he saw nothing coming back at him but wall upon wall of ego mind. And you know Jesus must have been, he must have been very frustrated and sad at times about humanity.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure he was, and I love what you said, Joseph. And Jesus certainly. And the thing is, if we really knew what Jesus was saying, um, we could have just such an amazing world. And if everybody could, walk on water, it wouldn't be a big thing. Like kind of like you were saying earlier. I mean, the miracles to us seem like, oh, they're great, but that should be normal to us. I think it's
Yeah,
possible. I believe it if we, learn to do. But he also, and you were talking about, like and again, power. Okay, not a good word, but the birthright that Jesus had of being able to collapse reality, of doing these miracles. I mean, it was just, it's amazing. But he was telling us that we can do it too if we, it, I like what he said. He said something because he said the root of all evil, money, the love of money, the love of things,
yeah,
is the root of all evil. That's looking for our contentment, our happiness, our who we are, our self-worth outside of us.
yeah,
And we're in such an incredibly materialistic world that we live in, where everything, all these flashy lights, and we got to follow all these shiny objects and get this and have this so we can be more. But he said, if I've told you of what he said, if I've told you of earthly things and you don't believe me, how can you understand if I tell you of heavenly things? Um, or if we haven't been faithful in handling the unrighteous money. In other words, money is the highest source of power in this physical realm, in the Newtonian realm. With
yeah,
money, we can own people, we can buy people, we can have all this power. If we use that money to in service of the ego, we will use the spiritual authority in the service of the ego too, which is why Jesus said, if you haven't been faithful in handling the money, how can you be entrusted with the true riches? Which is the things we're talking about, the things that Jesus did, the things that he said, the works that I do, you can do also, and even greater works than these can you do. But like you were saying, Jesus in the wilderness, he had the battle. I mean, that man, I'm hungry. I could turn this stone into bread and I could just eat. That would taste really good. But he didn't. He was committed to a 40-day fast. He could have, owned the world. He could have had all this, and he knew it. But that's crucifying the ego, that's denying the self, and he had the true power within him, and the true happiness. And so, and this is why it's so important. He said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Okay, how can we walk in the power that he walked in if we judge our neighbor, if we hate, if we don't forgive, if we're greedy? We're then in our physical strength,
Yeah.
you know. So we have to get beyond the mind, beyond our conditioning, beyond the groupthink of the, of whatever religion we've identified with, whatever ethnic group we've identified with, whatever nation we've identified with, and realize that, hey, beyond this physical matter, when we're talking about the unified field, the quantum field, we are all connected to it. It is in us. And, when we're sending out hate to another person, that is coming back to us. And that is the law, as certain as the law of gravity.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And um, I just to conclude, I think that how could I put this? I think that Jesus most certainly came to free humanity, and he most not in the
Absolutely.
messianic way that people thought of his time, and I think he came to free humanity, but not from us being horrible, worthless, toe rag sinners like we've been fed. And I think he came to free humanity in a way that perhaps even his closest followers didn't fully comprehend at the time, because they didn't have the actual knowledge, and they were human beings. They would have still been very much bound by their cultural influences and their geographical location, and the influences that had been drilled into their child minds growing up among the Pharisees, etc. And I mean, Jesus, at one point, perhaps he was displaying a little bit of frustration when he said, if you don't believe it for the words I'm speaking, believe it for the actions I've done, believe it for the things you've seen. He was perhaps, and he was saying that when he was approaching his execution, and perhaps at that point it was one last ditched attempt to try and get them to understand. I mean, it was in the upper room that he gives what I think is just the most beautiful, beautiful speech in the whole of the Gospels, when he's speaking to them like children in the upper room, uh, explaining to them about the unified field, and about how he's in the Father and the Father's in him, and that we're all one. And he was explaining it to them like we're children, and it was beautiful. And but if you read that from the angle that he's not speaking as God, he's speaking as an enlightened master. If you read it from that, who knows he's about to be executed, if you read it from that angle, I think you can see that Jesus is perhaps starting to get just a little bit frustrated at this point, that they still haven't, even his closest followers still haven't quite grasped it, because he knew what humanity can be. He knew what the human family can be, and he's not the first spiritual master to go to the next realm without humanity achieving it. And let's hope, that let's hope someday we as a human family finally grasp that we're not flesh and bones, we're not human beings, we're we're spirit that's evolving into absolute consciousness. And if we start taking things like collapsing reality, and taking things like the kingdom within, and taking things like our true essence, our true being, if we start taking these things seriously, then we'll evolve into that absolute consciousness that can that defies want defies death, defies need, defies hunger, defies lust, defies greed, defies everything, because none of those things are important to a being that is sheer consciousness.
Oh, Joseph, that was so well said. I mean, I absolutely love that. I have loved this conversation. We're up on an hour right now, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this. And wow, we've covered some great things. And I totally feel like your book, The Quantum Kingdom Within. And man, I am excited. Like I say, I haven't read all of your. The Collapsing Reality, but I have the book, and it's amazing. So I will put in the description box where people can get that. And I just want to say thank you, Joseph, because this has been amazing. And let's put this
You're
vision
very
out
welcome.
there.
You're very
Yeah.
welcome. I love coming on here and talking and reading the comments and interacting with what is which is a community, and hopefully a growing community. Um, I, I, I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and every time you say to me you want to do it again, I'm all over it. So I have to thank you and your community. I feel like I've been adopted. I have to thank you and your community for the kindness and the generosity that you are all showing to me. And if I don't want anybody to think I'm on here just to try and sell books. I'm not. I'm on here because this message is so important to me, and I want to share it as far and wide as I can. If you do want to read my books, as Danny says, there's a link to my website in the description. But beyond that, I just research, meditate, consider, and let's, as a human family, just grow this thing.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And I know your motive is not to sell books, and my motive is not to be a big YouTube star. I hate making videos, to tell the truth. I don't like it, but I think the message needs to be put out there. I mean, I see it so crystal clearly, and I know you do too. And I think other people are waking up to it, and we need to wake up fast, my friend. And so let's keep shouting it from the rooftops. Let's do this again soon, and we'll hopefully collapse reality, get people to, instead of the shared realities of division and separation, we can get people to into a shared reality of unity through the teachings of Christ, and others, great masters, and we can shift the consciousness of the world, my friend. So thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. If you haven't already, go ahead and click the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.